Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Friday, July 31st. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. On yesterday's show, we had Brett Ciancia from Pick Six Previews on to talk about the newly released ACC schedule for the fall. And because it is 2020, a whole bunch of stuff has changed in the last 24 hours. So now the SEC has put out its preliminary schedule, and there was a report that the Big Ten schedule could be on the way as soon as well. Buckeye Scoop beat reporter Tony Gerdeman joins me this morning. And Tony, right now, it looks like the five Power Five conferences have five different dates set as their opening weeks. And from the looks of things, this is shaping up to be an absolutely wild fall in college football.
Yeah, I guess if we're going to be saddled with a pandemic where everything has changed and we're stuck at home, at least we could have a crazy college football season that is staggered and get something new every week. And there's going to be quite a bit of drama just based on all of the different starting points. Basically, it's all new. All of the schedules will be new. The ACC has put out not quite their schedule, but who's playing whom. And so it's almost like, you get everybody knew the schedules like all winter and spring long. And, you get used to that. And then in this past like couple of weeks, it's like, no, all of that is out the window. So you're getting all of this thrown at you. And so it's all, as Ohio State running backs coach Tony Alford likes to say, we're kind of drinking schedules through a fire hose right now. And we're still waiting on more and for everything to be solidified. But the staggered starts of some of these conferences is going to lead to some opportunities for a couple of conferences out there.
Well, here's where things stand right now, and we are recording this just to give you a little peek behind the curtain on Thursday evening, a little after 8 o'clock on Thursday evening. So if something has changed after this, that is not on us. We apologize, but that is not on us. We waited as long as we could to record because things seem to keep changing, but we are past the close of business on the West Coast, so we should be okay. As of right now, the Big 12 is currently planning to play its first games on August 29th. The report on Thursday from Teddy Greenstein at the Chicago Tribune is that the Big Ten is still reportedly looking at September 5th. The ACC has said they plan to open the week of September 7th, so that's September 7th is Labor Day, so that week. The Pac-12 is looking at no earlier than September 19th, and the SEC on Thursday said September 26th for them. I mean, it is all over the place, and there's not much guaranteed about this year, but the only thing that is 100% guaranteed is this is going to be a college football season unlike pretty much anything we've seen. As I said, the SEC is looking at starting on September 26th. That is close to a month after the date the Big 12 has its potential start date. So all along, the thinking from a lot of people has been that you want to start early, give yourself time to adjust. That's sort of been the talking point from the Big 10, a number of other conferences. So, Tony, can you explain a little bit about why the Pac-12 is thinking about September 19th now, and then the SEC even a week after that?
Yeah, it gives them an opportunity to watch others do it and see how they handle it. Plus, they want to see what happens with students getting back to campus, assuming there are going to be students on campus. I think it might be too early to assume there's going to be a whole bunch of students just flooding back in. But for me, I don't understand the waiting. I would rather start sooner. If students aren't on campus, great, start then. But yeah, I guess you can kind of understand what the SEC is doing in terms of just wanting to see how everybody else does, how they handle it. Does it work? But if it doesn't work and things get shut down, then you've missed out entirely, perhaps. So, I would prefer starting as early as possible rather than as late as possible. But the key then is if the season goes off without a hitch, you've also got the SEC playing by themselves at the end of the season with all eyes on them, which it will be interesting to see if the rest of the conferences maybe stretch out their schedule to match the end of the SEC's schedule, where I believe they're having their championship game on December 19th, which is 2 weeks after the normal championship week. So, and the ACC's championship week is September 12th or 19th. So I wouldn't be surprised to see other conferences trying to make sure that the SEC is not all by themselves at the end of the season.
Well, there's a real interesting side angle to all of this, which is there's no guarantee that there is a college football playoff this year, or that the bowls look anything like the bowls normally do. And if everything stays extremely siloed and everyone is just playing in their own league, the SEC potentially having, the final word on things if they're playing their championship game a week or two after most of the other conferences. And this goes to one of those old school, we're just going to let the AP poll decide this year, and we're just going to play regular season like it's, 1952. That could actually benefit the SEC to be playing late like that. Unlike the ACC this year, the SEC was sticking with divisions. The ACC just basically wiped it all out and is starting from scratch. The SEC looks like they're going to be sticking with divisions, at least for now. As you said, they're rescheduling that championship game for December 19th. They are also not playing non-conference games. That was something that the ACC had sort of floated on Wednesday, like, we could play one out-of-conference game in-state. So, Clemson, South Carolina, Kentucky, Louisville, Florida, Florida State. The ACC had sort of floated those Wednesday. That's now, those are now dead, with the SEC just saying they're only going to play conference games. Obviously, still a lot in the air. There was leaked schedules at one point that the SEC had out from, notable reporters, not just random people, that then got deleted. So I think maybe those may have been a little premature or inaccurate. But I mean, what do you read into the SEC schedule right here? Is this, a brilliant Machiavellian move where they're setting themselves up to be the last people on the stage and be able to if it comes down to a vote, sort of lobby for, hey, we're we're always the best, and look, we are the last ones. Clearly, we should be the national champions. Is this a brilliant Machiavellian move from them, or is this just they're kind of doing what everyone else is going to end up doing later?
Well, I think it's both. Can it be both, Tom? They're just following the Big Ten's lead, but in doing so, when you rank the conferences, the SEC is always first, and if everybody's only playing their own conference, then that's going to give the SEC the benefit of the doubt if there are any ties or some close discussions. So I think playing just 10 conference teams, which is two more than they normally play, is a pretty significant advantage. Although, Tom, you also have to win those games. So I don't know that Nick Saban is looking at a 10 conference game season as an advantage. But as we also know, a loss in the SEC is almost as good as a win in the ACC.
The leaked schedule that came out earlier that later got deleted by the reporter had Florida playing 2 additional cross-division games, and they were against Alabama and Texas A&M. So I don't know if that's going to end up being correct, but yeah, our guest yesterday, Brett Ciancia, had predicted Florida to make the college football playoff, which was, interesting but rational. But boy, if you add the Crimson Tide and Aggies to that schedule, that probably makes it a little bit of a tougher road. So as far as the Big Ten, they have not released anything official yet. As I said off the top, Teddy Greenstein from the Chicago Tribune, who is usually pretty plugged in at the league office, he had the outline on Thursday of what it could look like when the league does put something out. The anticipation is probably by early next week. Here's what he wrote, the quote: "The most likely plan is for 10 games starting September 5th, with 3 to 5 open dates to allow for the possibility of teams having to quarantine for 10 days or more." That is something that I think you and I have talked about as what we viewed as the most likely scenario for a while, sort of what we've been hearing. It would put the Big Ten on the field potentially 3 weeks before any SEC team. So, there's a lot of ways in which that might make more sense. Without students on campus, though, there's a lot of unknowns right now. But it does seem, Tony, like it's a real opportunity for the Big Ten to really dominate the schedule for the first month of the season, and potentially maybe you start the narrative off strong, and you kind of have the stage to yourself for the first month.
Yeah, the first week of college football season every year, you've got some marquee matchups from non-conference teams battling each other. I think this is an opportunity, and Tom, Big Ten likes to have enough interesting inventory, and that's kind of how they do their matchups. This is an opportunity to just come out of the gate with all kinds of interesting games in the first couple of weeks, or even that first week, to make a splash where there's no reason you can't start on that Thursday and just go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, like every year. Like the start of every first week of the college football season, where if you can get to that Thursday, then you've got games until the Monday of Labor Day weekend, and the Big Ten could be that. And then week 2, week 3, there's no SEC going on, and you're the biggest, baddest conference out there, and you could start putting your marquee games out there, division games, which the assumption is they'll be at the forefront. And so when you've got, if you're the biggest conference going at that point, you can really set the tone for that first 3 or 4 weeks and can maybe control the narrative. But is everybody's just going to be sitting and waiting for the SEC? So yeah, people will be watching. Yeah, sure, Minnesota looks good, but let's see what Auburn and Texas A&M and Florida and Georgia, and that would be a disappointment for the Big Ten, where if everybody is just waiting for the SEC. But I tend to think that people are just going to be so hungry for college football that there might not be mention of the SEC for a couple of weeks, which sounds insane just saying it right now out of my mouth. But there's certainly an opportunity to set the tone, to make your teams known, to make your players known, and to have all eyes on you for a significant amount of time. And with Fox doing the big noon kickoff, Big Ten could have the marquee games from noon, 3:30, and 7 or 8. Every single weekend, for the most part, for that first few weeks. And if they want to be really diabolical, all maybe schedule their biggest games for the SEC opening weekend.
Well, I mean that's something that would be right in line with what we've been hearing for a while, and that's what Teddy Greenstein reported on Thursday, was that at least unless things change, the divisional games will be front loaded because those tend to require shorter travel. There's still some question about whether they'll add an extra cross divisional game later to everyone's schedule, just start from scratch somehow, and potentially place multiple teams. But yeah, I mean you could be very well looking at a September Ohio State Michigan game, and in a year full of weird, unusual, unprecedented things, how weird would a September Ohio State Michigan game be?
It's hard to even process it. It's like, yeah, it's fine to talk about, but in reality, Ohio State and Michigan don't play in September. So why don't we also talk about unicorns while we're here? We can just vamp on unicorns. But I think this unicorn is real. This one is going to happen, and even if it's October, I still think that's almost as insane. But you got to get it scheduled early. That way, if it does need to be pushed back, you've got dates to push it back to. You schedule it late, the time runs out. So, yeah, I'm making friends with Michigan in September, but I'm also making friends with anything in September, anything in October, anything in November. I'm going to be friendly this year.
Any football type substance would be just fine. Absolutely. The Big Ten right now is not talking about putting players in a bubble. That is something that has worked really well for the NBA and NHL so far. Major League Baseball has tried not to do it, and it has sort of worked depending on the team. But it sounds like the Big Ten is trying to just kind of try to manage it by spacing things out a little bit on the schedule. It has mostly worked at places like Michigan and Penn State. Ohio State had a shutdown that our sources were saying is kind of a very preventative and probably overly cautious thing. But you've had issues at Michigan State. You've had issues at Rutgers. Can this work for college football? Can the MLB, not outside of a bubble, can that work in college football?
I think it can work for some programs. The whole Rutgers thing, where a bunch of the schools, teams had a party or something, and a dozen or so football players pick up COVID there. Like, it may not work for the dumb teams or the teams that aren't taking things as seriously as others. And I guess that's kind of a microcosm of college football anyway. The teams who take it the most serious do the best. And I think the teams that take COVID the most serious, and there may not be a bubble, but you can still put yourself in a bubble. You can have a bubble around you. And those players and those leaders and those teams that do that the most, you would think that they would have the best opportunity. Of course, it only takes one guy to ruin that punch bowl, so to speak. And, um, I just think the most disciplined teams win, and the most disciplined teams here are going to be the safest. And I guess that's the key to every college football season, but maybe never quite as much as this one.
Well, yeah, there is obviously a lot still to come on all of this. We will probably have another show early next week when we're talking about when the Big Ten finally does drop its schedule. A lot going on right now with all of this. Buckeye Scoop will continue to follow it all as it develops. Tony and I are dropping an episode of the Buckeye Weekly podcast today, which will touch on all of this in a lot more detail, as well as some major recruiting news that's seemingly set to break any day now. You can find Buckeye Weekly and all of our great podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud. Just search Buckeye Scoop. You can subscribe right there. Please leave us a rating and review while you're there as well. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great weekend. We will talk to you Monday.